That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, my dudes, I know that we are going to get a lot of hate comments for this video because I am literally just going back on something that I said 2 months ago. And honestly, I don't feel the need to apologize for it because 2 months ago, I told you that these running backs were overrated in fantasy drafts, that I was wanting to avoid them in those underdog leagues that we were doing so long ago. I know a lot of people have been signed up for underdog a very long time. We just now started streaming it, but we've been able to track ADP all offseason due to those underdog drafts. And back then, I thought that these players were overvalued. I would rather have wide receivers in the middle rounds. But since then, they have fallen drastically. And I don't know if it's because of everybody out here all of a sudden talking about why they are players you want to be avoiding. But I thought that a couple months ago at a higher draft price. And now I'm looking at them at a cheaper cost and I'm going, you know what? I think that the risk actually is worth taking for the price that you're getting at because you're not passing up on that many high caliber wide receivers. So let's talk about some running backs in this video that I'm actually surprising myself and that I'm drafting them in 2021, even though I wasn't planning on it. I mean, I'm sure that y'all have seen me drafting them in our live streams that we are doing every single night. And if you haven't seen me in those live streams every single night, make sure, guys, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, come out to those live streams because we are going to be live streaming every single night until we get to the season. We are going to be doing underdog best ball fantasy drafts. The best way you can prepare for the fantasy football season is go through and sign up for Underdog, promo code FLOCK, get a free $25 when you deposit $10, as well as get our 2021 draft guide for free. Then you'll have a free $35 to go through and play with. You can get in a ton of drafts that are going to be real money leagues. So your quote unquote mock drafters aren't leaving the draft halfway through. All of a sudden you're drafting against a computer, which is absolutely meaningless. But that's it. Let's dive into Josh Jacobs as our first running back. And like I said, guys, I mean, when Josh Jacobs was going in the 3rd round, I hated that draft price. I mean, I thought it was one of the worst draft prices that you were ever going to see. But now he's fallen a round and a half, almost 2 rounds over the past 2 months. Now, I mean, nothing really has changed. We knew that Kenyan Drake was there the second that he signed. The only real difference in Las Vegas is the fact that all of a sudden people are looking at Josh Jacobs, looking at the fact that we've been screaming that Kenyan Drake got paid $11 million guaranteed. He was going to get touches in a regular fashion and that Josh Jacobs need to be drafted later. And all of a sudden, I think people have overcorrected on Josh Jacobs because you look at underdog drafts right now, you were getting Josh Jacobs in the 5th round. You were getting Josh Jacobs, a running back that was a 1st round pick last year, who came out and at 22 years old, put up a high-end running back 2 season. Now, all of a sudden, he's falling to the 5th and a running back that I never thought I'd be drafting, I'm actually drafting. Because if we pull up underdog ADP, and keep in mind, guys, underdog fantasy is really great ADP that you can be looking at, given the fact that these aren't just mock drafters. These aren't people in there just clicking random buttons. I mean, everybody in here has money on the line. Every buy-in to a draft exists. So, I mean, we're looking at this as real ADP that you can base your own fantasy draft off of. And Josh Jacobs being drafted at 53 overall, he's going behind Deontay Johnson, Brandon Ayuk, Josh Allen, Kenny Golladay, Lamar Jackson. I don't understand that in the slightest. He's going directly ahead of Kyler Murray, Odell Beckham Jr., Chase Claypool, and Mike Davis. So Josh Jacobs shouldn't even be close to Mike Davis in fantasy drafts this year. And I think based on the fact that you're really only passing up on Odell Beckham Jr. and Chase Claypool, the wide receiver position, it's a no-brainer to go out there and draft Josh Jacobs because we look at this as a running back. While yes, we've acknowledged his red flags, at the same time, he has some things working in his favor. Like we already discussed, Josh Jacobs is currently only 23 years old, which is ridiculous to think about, okay? Everybody's drafting Najee Harris in the 2nd round this year. And guys, Najee Harris, a rookie coming in, is 28 days older than Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs is going into his 3rd year in the NFL. So I don't think it's just completely out of the question to assume that Josh Jacobs is going to continue to progress. I mean, what's really funny is Terry McLaurin and Josh Jacobs were both in that 2019 draft class. Josh Jacobs, 23, Terry McLaurin about to be 26. I mean, this is crazy with what you're seeing and how you expect Josh Jacobs to be able to develop this upcoming year. Obviously, if you go back and you look at the Josh Jacobs profile, this looks like a running back that can handle usage on all three downs, 5'10", 220 pounds. He was drafted in the first round by the Las Vegas Raiders at the time, the Oakland Raiders. But anyway, we go down and we look at what he did in his rookie and his sophomore year. And after his rookie season, all the conversation was about Josh Jacobs getting more usage in the receiving game. And that was the number one red flag that you had with Josh Jacobs coming into the NFL, was the fact that he wasn't utilized in the receiving game out of Alabama that often. And a lot of people that watch film said, hey, don't worry about that. Don't worry about the numbers. Josh Jacobs is a more than capable pass catcher. Well, his rookie season in the NFL, that didn't show at all, but he still is very impressive given the fact that, I mean, he was drafted at 20 years old. He comes into his rookie year at 21, and he comes out, he averages over 100 total yards a game as a rookie. He ends up as the running back 16 in points per game. That is massive. He does this with a volume in the rushing game, really nothing in the receiving game, as he's seeing close to 19 carries a game, only 2 targets a game. But what's really notable is the change to 2020, because everybody was talking about the potential of Josh Jacobs getting more usage in the receiving game, which kind of happened. I mean, he bumps it up to 3 targets a game, but still at the end of the day, 3 targets a day isn't going to get you where you want to be. I mean, it's not Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry type level bad, but at the same time, you would rather see your running backs up there near 5 targets a game. That's a range that you would love. Regardless, 3 targets a game isn't the worst for Josh Jacobs. And beyond this, what is very surprising is Josh Jacobs actually leads the NFL in his red zone rushes. So we've presented that historical research. We have showed exactly what you're looking for in a running back to be a hit in fantasy. And you want 2 things. You want usage in the receiving game, and you want usage in the red zone. So with Josh Jacobs, you're not getting the elite usage in the receiving game that you would look for. But there's nobody better to find red zone usage with than Josh Jacobs. And I know this is volatile season to season, and that's why in the draft guide, if y'all have had the chance to go through and read it, I know a lot of other people in their draft guides, what they would actually put down is they would probably put down touchdowns. They would actually probably not even convert it to a per game basis. We convert everything to a per game basis because if you're looking at season long numbers, you're just doing everybody a disservice. But regardless, we convert everything to a per game basis. And what we've actually found is stickier season to season and trying to chase fantasy points and project players is red zone rushes. You don't want to be chasing touchdowns because touchdowns are so volatile year to year. You want to make sure you know what a player is going to look like with their red zone usage. And Josh Jacobs is elite in the red zone with how often the Raiders are looking to go to him. Now, of course, there is one major red flag with Josh Jacobs, which is why we were screaming that he was a fade in the 3rd round just 2 months ago. And that flag is Kenyan Drake coming in. Kenyan Drake, a running back that I hated in fantasy drafts last year based on the fact that he was being drafted in the 2nd round off a small sample. But still, with Kenyan Drake, you look at the contract that he actually got. You see Kenyan Drake getting $11 million guaranteed. That is massive. I mean, to put this into context, James Conner, who is replacing Kenyan Drake, he got $1.75 million. So Kenyan Drake gets about 8 times what James Conner gets at signing. And you have to understand that has an impact on how many touches a player is going to be seeing, how many snaps a player is going to be seeing. Because the Raiders, they aren't paying Kenyan Drake $11 million to come in and just be a handcuff running back that's going to be riding the pine behind Josh Jacobs. No, Kenyan Drake's coming in. He's most likely going to get usage in the receiving game, which of course has to lower your expectation of Josh Jacobs. But your expectation doesn't have to be that high when you're getting Jacobs in the 5th round. And with Drake, I love Drake in fantasy this year. I'm drafting Drake more aggressively than I'm drafting Josh Jacobs, considering their prices. I actually think that both running backs in this backfield are intriguing. But Kenyan Drake, I think, can get volume without having to take it away from Josh Jacobs, where Kenyan Drake's coming in, and this is an offense that's losing Devontae Booker, going over to New York, and at the same time, Jalen Richard technically still on the roster, but if you look at his contract situation, I wouldn't be surprised if Jalen Richard was not with the team when we come week 1. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it is what it is. And you look at those 2 running backs, who I'm assuming that Kenyan Drake's taking the usage away from them. They actually had over 110 carries last year. They had over 40 targets last year. So I think that Kenyan Drake can get that volume. He can steal a little bit from Josh Jacobs. He can actually return value on his ADP. Josh Jacobs can actually return value on his ADP. And if they're both projected to beat their ADPs, and then we understand that there's an upside of what would happen with Kenyan Drake going down to Josh Jacobs' fantasy value, and all of a sudden Jacobs becomes a running back one that you got in the 5th round of your fantasy draft. I mean, think about starting your draft off with potentially drafting Devontae Adams in the 1st, then going and getting a Darren Waller in the 2nd, Allen Robinson in the 3rd, and then the 4th round, maybe you want to go running back. Maybe you get someone like a Chris Carson. Then as your running back 2, you get Josh Jacobs. That would be a ridiculous start. And we've actually been drafting Josh Jacobs in those underdog drafts where we're drafting every single night. You use promo code FLOCK, get our 2021 fantasy football draft guide, get a free $25. And over there on Underdog, we've actually had a 15% exposure mark to Josh Jacobs. We actually drafted him in a $100 league. And I mean, we've drafted him in 2 $100 leagues, but let me pull up the first one. And this one we drafted at the 102. We took Dalvin Cook in the 1st. Najee Harris fell to us at the 211. Didn't love the value of Najee Harris, but we're going to be doing so many of these when he falls that far. I think we kind of have to take him. We get AJ Brown in the 3rd, and then all the way back to us in the 4th round, we take Josh Jacobs. 1 pick before Mike Davis. There's no planet in which Josh Jacobs and Mike Davis should be going back to back next to each other in fantasy drafts. So I love that start that we actually had there. He goes directly behind Adam Thielen, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Miles Sanders, and some other intriguing wide receivers. And then our other underdog draft that we actually selected him in, we got him a little bit later. This is another $100 league. This time we were selecting from the 106. We actually took Ezekiel Elliott in the 1st round. Then we get Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the 2nd. Allen Robinson in the 3rd, Mike Evans in the 4th, and falling all the way to us at the 506, we get Josh Jacobs. 1 pick before Robbie Anderson, 2 picks before Mike Davis, 3 picks before Odell Beckham Jr. Josh Jacobs is a smash here. And what's funny is if you look at the underdog ADP, I mean, of course, I want y'all to jump in our underdog drafts because, I mean, I like drafting with y'all. I like talking about it on a live stream. So please continue to come out to our live streams and hop in our underdog drafts that we're going to be doing every single night. But if you go through and you draft on underdog, even not in our drafts, you're going to find Josh Jacobs falling a little bit further than this, which, like I said, I hated him when he was going in the 3rd round. I was adamant that that was a horrendous pick. But now all of the sudden that you can get him in the 5th round consistently, I like this Josh Jacobs value. So now let's go over to our next running back in a very similar mold where I didn't like him at the beginning of the year when he was going in the 3rd, but now I think he's a good value. This is going to be Miles Sanders. So Miles Sanders right now is going on average at pick 44, so a little bit higher than Josh Jacobs. He's going directly behind DJ Moore, Cooper Kupp, David Montgomery, Jamar Chase. He's going directly ahead of T. Higgins, Kyle Pitts, Adam Thielen, Deontay Johnson. So with Miles Sanders, I prefer having him over Josh Jacobs this upcoming year. I think at a value, though, we probably prefer Josh Jacobs just a little bit because you are having to pay more for Miles Sanders. And you pull up this Miles Sanders profile, and I want to remind everyone that I was so high on Miles Sanders in that 2019 draft class because he came out of high school as the #1 running back recruit in the entire country. He goes to Penn State. He gets parked behind Saquon Barkley. So, of course, you're not going to be able to see him when he's running behind Saquon Barkley. Nobody's saying that Miles Sanders is a better running back than Barkley. Then all of a sudden, he finally gets his shot when Barkley goes to the NFL. He looks fantastic in college. He gets utilized in the receiving game a ton. He goes to the his NFL Combine, not Pro Day. I got 2021 stuck in my mind. And he shows that he really checks every single box. He has a decent size profile, 5'11", 211 pounds. You would like him to be a little bit heavier, but that's not too bad. He runs a very fast 40-yard dash at a 4.49. He actually gets drafted in the late 2nd round. So Miles Sanders was a very intriguing prospect. And he also comes out here and in his rookie year, now keep in mind, you look at his full season numbers in 2019, they're not as impressive as what you saw with Josh Jacobs. But with Miles Sanders, this is a running back that was very similar to Nick Chubb in his rookie season back in 2018, where if y'all remember with Nick Chubb, he actually split that backfield with Carlos Hyde up until about week 8. And then after week 8, Nick Chubb took over. You never saw Carlos Hyde again. And then Nick Chubb was a league winner. It was the same exact thing with Miles Sanders in 2019, where you look at his season-long numbers, they don't look that great, but you have to understand that there are two sides of the story here. I mean, with Miles Sanders, this is a running back that came out and had to share a backfield with Jordan Howard to start the year. But eventually, he stole that job away from Jordan Howard when Jordan Howard had a slight injury. Miles Sanders never gave the job back, and he finished his rookie season as a league-winning running back. Now, a big problem was that going into 2020, all of a sudden, Miles Sanders was a running back going in the first round. And I am not going to shy away from this. I was saying to draft Miles Sanders in 2020. Miles Sanders was going way too high. He finishes as a low-end running back 2, the running back 19. That was a really bad call by me. And of course, we're not going to hide our stance and where we were with Miles Sanders. Not only did I say to draft him in 2019, but just to show exactly how dumb I am, whenever he was starting off the year slowly, I came out and I doubled down and I said, buy Miles Sanders on the low. So we were all in on Miles Sanders. We failed miserably because the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line was horrendous, because Carson Wentz was possibly the worst quarterback in the NFL. I'm not going to make too many excuses, but our Miles Sanders call failed horribly. But now you're getting Miles Sanders consistently in the 4th round. And the reason you're seeing a large drop from Miles Sanders is really twofold. Okay, so here you see him playing with Jalen Hurts, and we have talked about before why you don't necessarily want your running backs playing with those Russian quarterbacks, because yes, those Russian quarterbacks like a Lamar Jackson, they're going to make it where the running backs have such a high yards per carry and their efficiency is through the roof. This is what you see last year with J.K. Dobbins leading the NFL in yards per carry, Gus Edwards also being a top 10 running back in yards per carry. It's not because J.K. Dobbins is the best running back in the NFL. It's not because Gus Edwards is a top 10 running back in the NFL. While they're both very talented players, it's more so to do with the fact that when Lamar Jackson goes to hand the ball off, a linebacker can't crash on the running back in that instance because Lamar Jackson can always keep it himself and take it around the edge. Whereas on another team, just go to New Orleans last year. I mean, if Drew Brees goes to hand the ball off, it's either going to be a play action or it's going to be Drew Brees handing the ball off. Drew Brees isn't running around. So the linebacker who's already crashing in, he can just target it on the running back. He can just continue to go in. So it's great for these running backs to be playing alongside of Jalen Hurts, a Trey Lance, a Lamar Jackson for that reason. But why it's actually really bad for them in fantasy is what you're going to find that the targets that they get out of the backfield, that's going to drastically come down. And the reason it's going to come down is we understand that with those Russian quarterbacks, the perfect example is a Lamar Jackson. If his primary read is not going to be there, maybe his secondary read isn't going to be there as well. Instead of all of a sudden going to his 3rd or maybe last read at the running back position, checking it down, avoiding a sack, he has the capability of just going, okay, well, my first 2 reads aren't there. Let's tuck it and run. Let's go pick up the first down that way. This is very similar to what we saw with Taysom Hill with Alvin Kamara last year. And this is why you always see those Russian quarterbacks never target their running backs out of the backfield, even though Miles Sanders is a fantastic pass-catching running back, not necessarily someone that's going to rack up a ton of targets. Now, one more concern that you have with the Russian quarterbacks is also in a very similar instance with a Josh Allen or a Kyler Murray from last year. You are going to potentially be facing a situation where the running backs may not necessarily see the touchdown volume you would expect because there's a lot of read action at the goal line. Those quarterbacks like to vulture those touchdowns very often. But beyond this, I actually think that Miles Sanders, his value going down has been driven a lot by the names that have been added to the Philadelphia Eagles backfield. And in the case of a Kenyan Drake being added to Las Vegas, I think that is significant. I think you need to take note, and that's why we were saying to drop Josh Jacobs down. But with a Kenneth Gainwell, with a Kerryon Johnson being added to Philadelphia, I'm not worried about this at all. Now, yes, I actually liked Kenneth Gainwell going into the NFL draft this year, but with Kenneth Gainwell, what we actually found is this is a running back that fell to the 5th round of the NFL draft. Guys, running backs that fall to the 5th round of the NFL draft, those are practice squad players. Those are guys that are never going to see the field. Do not think that Kenneth Gainwell coming in takes any touches away from Miles Sanders. Maybe he takes touches away from Boston Scott if he can beat Boston Scott out from that job, but he's not taking anything away from Miles Sanders. Now, another instance of this where fantasy owners know the name, so for whatever reason, they think that it's significant. I mean, Kerryon Johnson going to Philadelphia. Well, yeah, I mean, everybody liked Kerryon Johnson coming out of Auburn in that 2018 class. Guys, he never really did anything in Detroit. I know that he was a very exciting player in Dynasty Fantasy Football. His value rose to a point that 2019 offseason where Kerryon Johnson was viewed as a core piece. Well, guys, he got cut by the Lions. Don't hold on to those prior evaluations that you have for Kerryon Johnson. He's a running back that's not going to be doing anything. So don't be trying to draft him aggressively. Don't be thinking that he hurts Miles Sanders. And if we pull up the drafts where we've actually drafted Miles Sanders on Underdog Fantasy, use promo code FLOCK, get our 2021 draft guide, get a free $25. You're actually going to find that this first draft, we drafted at the 104. We started this draft off with Alvin Kamara. Then we went Najee Harris at the 209. We got Keenan Allen in the 3rd round. And then at the 409, we did take Miles Sanders, one pick before Josh Jacobs went off the board. Now, in our next draft, we were drafting with the 11th pick, and I started something that I think we're going to be doing more often on Underdog. And please, guys, if you use promo code FLOCK, you've been playing on these Underdog drafts, let me know if y'all attempted this strategy. It's something that I think I'm going to be doing a lot more often, where we went hyper fragile running back. We started this draft off with 4 running backs at the beginning. We got Aaron Jones at the 111, Austin Eckler at the 202, Chris Carson at the 311, and Miles Sanders at the 402. Then we didn't draft a single running back the rest of the draft. We loaded up on wide receiver, which I think is very valuable in best ball. Please let me know what y'all think of that. And please let me know if y'all attempt that at all when you're drafting on Underdog. But we took Miles Sanders at the 402, 1 pick behind Josh Jacobs, thinking that we were going to be able to slide up the running back values later on in the draft. That was going to push down wide receiver to us. But let me know what y'all think of those draft prices. Let me know what y'all think of Miles Sanders and Josh Jacobs, because I'm going to admit it. Yes, I didn't like them at the beginning of the offseason, but their price has drastically fallen. And I think that now we can actually draft them with confidence. And yeah, thank you, my dudes. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. That's all I got for y'all, and have a great day. We've gotten a ton of new members joining the flock. Thank you, Grind for Gold, Devin, Bungified, Brian, Brody, Victor, Chris, Grant, Trevor, and David. Thank you, my dudes.